I'm Gloria Preston. I'm a member of Diamond Hill Baptist Church. I'm a retired educator, having been a teacher, a principal, and a central office administrator. I grew up in, part of my growing up years was in Campbell County. My grandfather was a minister, and so he was the nicest guy you ever met. He really was, and he loved his granddaughters immensely, and so he gave us all the attention that you could possibly have. But he also made us very much not want to disappoint him because he loved us so much. And I recognize what a tremendous difference that makes in the life of the students that we encounter on a daily basis, especially in classroom situations, to give them that peace, that love, that whatever, makes a difference. Well, there are countless examples here in our own city. There are lots of organizations that work together for the good of the community. There's Parkview Mission, there's Interfaith Outreach, there's Beacon of Hope. So there was the Community Dialogue. So there are lots of entities in our community that work together for the common good. And what I like about those entities is they give all of us an opportunity to do what we can, because all of us can't do the same thing. But that doesn't mean that the thing that you do doesn't have value and the thing that I do does, because that's not true. Because, you know, as much as standing in a classroom teaching kids about literature is a worthwhile goal, if that kid's hungry, the cafeteria lady is a whole lot more valuable than Mrs. Preston is. You know, because our needs are different, and they're different on every day of the week. And so we have to meet the needs of our community. And I think sometimes we make the assumption that if I can't write the big check, that I can't make a difference in a community. But the conversation you have with this kid, or the coaching that you do, either through the rec department or for a city league or a school team, makes a difference. Or the meal that you give to the child that's hungry, or just offering some words of encouragement. So all of us have an opportunity to contribute, and I think we have to recognize that and take advantage of it when it presents itself. Well, I think experience leads to empathy, but I don't know that it has to be your own experience. I think sometimes just experiencing through the eyes of other people. I told you that I was a teacher for a number of years, and I remember coming home one day and kind of fussing about something that one of my students did, and I was telling one of my sons about whatever this is, and what he said to me was, "Ma, everybody doesn't grow up like we do. Everybody doesn't have a mom and dad at home that go to work every day." And it was like, how dare you? No, actually, but it was kind of like a rude awakening, because I was in my box. I was trying to teach whatever it was I was trying to teach, and this young person was getting in my way of my box. And when I thought about it from the perspective of a young person, and I thought, you know what? That's not my experience every day. And I need to be empathetic. I need to ask some questions and try to understand where this person is coming from. And that's true of adults as well as adults and children. So I remember, and I don't even remember what piece of literature it was, but it was something that had to do with you know, the time period during segregation. And so when my students entered the classroom, I gave each of them something of a color, you know, a marble, a checker, or something, whatever. And when they entered the classroom, I said, okay, if you have the red checker, you need to sit on this side of the room, near the front. If you have the black checker, you need to sit in the back of the room, near the door. And then I went about teaching my class as I typically do. But then my red checkers I responded to in my loving, smiling personality, and my students with the other checkers, then I snapped them up and I didn't answer their questions. And at some point during the class period, I served refreshments. So I gave, I don't know, chocolate chip cookies to the kids in the front row, and I gave some saltines that had kind of been crumbled up to the ones in the back row, and they were kind of looking at each other like, "What's up with this? This is not like her." And finally, I asked them, "So what's different here?" "Well, you're treating the kids this way, and you're treating it." So they picked up on it. I said, "Aha, that's what we want to talk about." And then we went into the literature. So there are lots of examples of things like that we, and I say we because all teachers do this kind of thing. When we taught Romeo and Juliet, one of the first questions I would ask is, how many of you have ever had a boyfriend or a girlfriend that your parents didn't like? Well, who in the world is that that hasn't had that experience? And so they could relate to that immediately. And the students often teach us lessons too. I had a student who was a special needs student, and she was in a regular classroom by her parents' design. And I was teaching, I want to say it was the story of Anne Frank or whatever. And each day she wanted to read that part. And each day because, I wanted to be read very well. And she could read okay, but she couldn't put the emphasis where I wanted it to be. And it came to like the second or third day, and I thought, I can't neglect her anymore. And so I let her read it. As it turns out, we were at a point in the play where the difficulty that the character in the play was having were similar to the difficulties that this student had. And what I recognized that by divine intervention, these kids got a message that they would not have gotten had we gone about it in my way, so to speak. And they talked about that. And to this day, I still have contact with that student because it was meaningful to her and it was meaningful to the other students in the classroom. So we learn from each other, and that's important. Well, I think even just going back and reading Dr. King's quotations and looking at the words that he uses, like consensus, like collaboration, like empathy, just looking at those words and trying to exercise those principles in the lives that we lead and in the people with whom we interact, so that we are, in fact, being our brother's keeper, that we are doing the things that we can to help each other, and that we're not picking and choosing who it is that we're going to help, because what we do helps everybody. And when we can build that level of trust, what a different community we would have. And community people that we deal with have different perspectives. And what I recognize is that there is some worth to all of those perspectives. And you got to hear them all. Because the perspectives of a parent of a gifted child might be different than the perspective of a parent of an alternative ed child, or the perspective of students that are Beacon of Hope scholars might be different than those that are first generation Beacon of Hope scholars. And so you got to hear all of it. You got to understand all of it and recognize that they are different perspectives, but they all have some value.